Welcome back to the table. Today, Ryan and I are taking a look and giving you a look at Back O Beyond. This is the first game from Fabled Games, and it is a pirate-themed game with what feels like worker placement, but kind of more like action selection. You are going to be putting workers and also time tokens out on this map to take a lot of actions. All of this in an effort to sort of build up your pirate ship, your crew, and all the things that go along with that, to go out and try to take on some vessels.
Yeah, this game is called Back O Beyond, and that kind of refers to like a secluded location. You have this secret pirate island that you're kind of inhabiting, and you're kind of bringing people in there to work on your boats, to come to the tavern and hang out for you to hire them. A lot of the game revolves around, like David said, building up your crew and your fleet, and then going out from this island to hunt trade vessels. You're doing that to raid those trade vessels for goods and victory points, and also to fulfill the demands of the Pirate Council. They want you to go out and do specific things. So over the course of the game, as you're taking actions, you're doing it with that goal in mind, going out and hunting down these ships in order to score the most infamy points. Whoever is the first or has the highest infamy pleases the council, they win the game.
Yeah, and as a reminder, what we have here is absolutely a prototype. Some of these have some final art, some of it doesn't. A lot of the components will likely change, just keep that in mind. But what you're looking at here is the main board. We have our player boards off screen. We'll show those to you later. But the main board has a number of things. It has that island. It has all those locations that you're going to. You're going to have this track here, which is your reputation, which is going to have some impact on those locations you go to, because as you increase your reputation, you're able to get a little bit more done in those locations. Those council cards, Ryan mentioned up here, are effectively going to sit there depending on player count, and you can fulfill those from there, or there's some actions that let you take them so that no one else can have them. Then you have some event cards that might come into play as you go out after some of these merchant vessels. And of course, the merchant vessels themselves, those are going to come out at the beginning of each round and randomly get sorted here at distances away that you're going to have to travel. And then all the locations you can go to, and down here, you've got the crew that you can potentially gain. And then, like I said, on our player boards, we're going to start with a captain. We're going to start with some player-specific crew members, and then the captain card itself has not only some powers, but also your starting resources and your reputation, your dread, and your morale.
You've noticed that the game is already in progress here, and we set it up to kind of show you how it works. So there's a little bit of hybrid going on here with worker placement and with action selection. All of these locations that are on the board can be visited by spending time. Everyone has a number of time tokens, and when you want to take an action, you just spend those time tokens to take the action. That's fine. You have a limited number of those time tokens, though. If you don't want to spend time tokens, you can send out your captain for free. And this is a little bit where the game gets interesting, because there are only a few actions on the board that your captain can visit. And those are determined randomly by this little captain tile. So at the start of every round, these locations are going to shift. And this will let me visit a location without spending time tokens. Now, this is more of what you would consider traditional worker placement, where once a captain is down in a spot, no one else can come there, no one else can take that action for free. However, David mentioned this reputation track, and it does a few different things. One thing it does, the higher you are in that reputation, the better the actions get in each one of these slots. So being level 3 in reputation means you get the best version of every action wherever you go. It also means that you can displace captains who are lower ranked than you. So if you're higher on the reputation, this captain could be dislodged. If you're higher, you can come over there, take their spot, and then they get bumped somewhere else, potentially blocking a location as well. Now, granted, if there's another player with higher reputation, they could continue to bump them around, and you're going to do that until all the worker placement spots potentially are full. But then, of course, you can still spend time, so you're never really blocked out of an action. But some of these actions cost 3 times, so doing it with your captain does save you a lot of time.
Exactly. Very literally, it saves you time. So using your captain is going to be one of those things, particularly in higher player count games. You're going to want to consider, do I want to get my captain out there? Because if you don't, or if there's a few captains out there, someone could displace one, then they could displace one and kind of bump, and then those spots are more filled. And if you're low on the reputation track, you might not be using your captain this round.
That's for sure.
There is some interesting things going on in this game where you think you might be able to participate in everything, but you might not. Some of the actions on the board are pretty straightforward. Again, we said we're going to be collecting things to sort of build up our vessels, build up our crew to go out there and attack these ships. The council hall is going to let you go up the reputation track and potentially claim some of those council cards. There's a place where you can get money or some treasure cards, and the treasure cards are a little bit more random, and they can do good things for you, bad things for other people. You can go here and do sabotage cards. This is probably one of the, well, certainly the most take that aspect of the game.
It's 100% take that.
You can go to the back alley, and you can either spend money or rum to give other players sabotage cards. And again, like Ryan said, depending on what your reputation is, you can do more of this. You can give sabotage cards to other players. You might even get extra sabotage cards to give out to people. These are given to them face down. You can't look at these until the next phase of the game, which is where we're going out to these vessels, and then you discover, oh, just like sabotage would happen.
Right.
Oh, someone did this to my ship.
My cannons aren't functioning anymore. My sails aren't working.
You can do a lot to build up and go at these ships in a not completely deterministic way, but you can build up to the point where you've increased your chances significantly.
Well, yeah, you can definitely build up. And the other three actions on the board, the C, D, and E actions, are how you're going to do that. The market lets you buy rum and food. You need food or fish to feed your people, your crew, and you need rum to trigger a lot of their special abilities. Every crew card has some unique abilities that can be triggered. A lot of them do require that spending of rum.
Yeah.
Down at the tavern, you can actually pay to recruit them, bring them onto your shipboard. Crew do a number of different things. They don't just give you special abilities, but those are really good. They also give you dice to roll during combat, and there's a few phases in combat. So some of these people man the cannons, which is one dice, and some of them are really good at boarding, which is white dice. That's another phase of the game. And then, of course, you have the docks where you're actually making repairs to your ship. You have two sections of your ships that are very important, your hull and your sails. You need high sails to reach the ships, and you need a high hull to resist the combat. If your ship ever sinks, you're not eliminated from the game, but you do effectively lose that combat, and now you're stuck with a bill. You have to go back to the docks and repair your ship if you want to do more combat.
You absolutely have to go back and sort of not only build up, but like repair so that you can go out there and do that again. The last location here, the harbor, is a very unique one because you have to put time tokens here. This kind of effectively, I think, thematically represents the planning you're putting together to go out. Because if you don't have time tokens in the harbor, you cannot participate in the next phase.
At all, which is huge.
And the way the next phase is ordered is whoever has the most time tokens in the harbor gets to go first. So you're going to get first dibs on the merchant vessels over here. Once we go to that phase, which is the hunt phase, in that order, you're going to basically target one of those merchant vessels and then go through a series of steps to try to combat that. And it is a series of steps for sure.
And what's interesting about the harbor is that every player has to put a unique number of tokens there. So if David's already put 3, I can't put 3. So in a 4-player game, if somebody placed 1, 2, and 3, you're not going to the harbor unless you're placing 4 of your time tokens, which is kind of huge. But priority does matter for a number of reasons. For one, some of these ships you'll notice are at a further distance, which is this number here. The farther away a ship is, the harder it is to reach. Everyone does have sails, but they're all asymmetric. So the maximum number of sails you have, the starting and maximum, are both different for every ship. And so to reach some of these ships, if you don't have enough sails, you're drawing event cards to make up the difference. So if you only have like 3 sails and you're stuck with only the 7, that's 4 event cards you can draw, and they can be very punishing. And so first come, first serve for that is a huge part of it.
Yeah, in our plays, we haven't seen any what I would call positive event cards.
I don't think there are
But
any.
we have seen some nothing happens event cards, sort of like
you can get lucky.
Clear skies, if you will. But generally, they're going to have a slightly negative impact on your ability to kind of carry out the rest of the hunt phase. And once you've reached that vessel, so you do that calculation with your sails and their distance, then you're going to take that card and try to go through a series of steps, starting with basically just how fearful you are, the amount of dread
phase,
you have as a pirate. And you're going to roll some dice according to where you are on the dread track and compare that to how many Jolly Rogers you need in order to sort of like scare them off.
Yeah, they have like a cowardice level. If they're too cowardly, they're very easy to scare away. You can effectively hoist your Jolly Roger and completely avoid the fight. They will just hand over all of their goods, which is really good.
Yeah, and so we've gotten to the part where we are rolling dice. And I know a lot of you are like, oh, dice? I don't know. I thought this was a worker placement action selection game. Well, it's even that much more of a hybrid. But we can tell you there's a lot of steps and layers to this sort of resolving this whole hunt phase. And the first part, you're able to use your morale to re-roll dice.
Yep.
Some of your powers on your crew are going to be able to help you. They're going to dictate how many dice you're rolling at times, as well as your dread track. And then your captain itself. In fact, my captain, I had Blackbeard. It says when you make a dread roll, which is this first part of the phase, you may either add 1 Jolly Roger, or I can exhaust 2 crew members, which just means you have to feed them a lot more to get them back in order to add 2 Jolly Rogers. So I could look out there, and if it was 2 or less, 1 or 2 dread level, I could just scare them off and I'm done.
I didn't have that ability. You're the scary pirate, but I'm a better fighter, and I have bonuses to the different phases of fighting. So while you are rolling dice, you can prepare, and you can look at the ship too. This is another reason why going first is great. Some of the ships are weaker. Maybe they have weaker cannons when you have great cannons. Maybe they have weaker swords, which is for the boarding party, and you have a lot of swords. So you can kind of hedge your bets, and you can kind of almost guarantee victory no matter what you roll due to the rerolls, the powers of your cards, and your captain. You can almost go into it with like a pretty high success, but you can also try to fight a ship that's much bigger and maybe take a little risk because you have those rerolls and things like that. But the phases are interesting. The cannon phase, the melee phase. Cannons, you compare your cannon value versus their evade. They have their cannons versus your evade. You do damage to each other. If you sink them, you win. If they sink you, then you're out of the fight.
Yeah.
And then you go into the boarding phase, which is where you're comparing your swords and pistols and things like that. So there are, it's interesting the way the different phases are because you can focus on one of them. Like David said, being really good at dread, or my character being really good at boarding. So I almost just call the cannon phase a wash. I just don't want to take damage.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sink them, but I have a really strong boarding party. And so I bought a lot of crew that added white dice. So I knew that I was even better at the thing I was already good at.
Yeah, it is really interesting because like Ryan just said, you could build up your crew so that I'm all about the boarding. Now, what that means is if you're going to lose the cannon phase, you're probably going to want to continually repairing and make sure your hull is up there because you're likely to take some damage. But yeah, you go through those 3 stages, and if you lose, you go to the next stage. If you win, you're done. So you have basically 3 chances to win is a very positive way of looking at it. And even if you do get through all 3 of those phases and still lose, you're still just going to lose a couple things, but you're still going to gain a lot of the things that you would want, like the food and the rum and the money.
It's like a consolation prize.
Yeah.
Every one of these ships has some value of money, food, and rum. You actually get that whether or not you win the fight or not. If you lose the fight, then the council feels bad for you. They give you some recompense.
They're nice pirates.
But if you do win the fight, you get all of the rewards, which are those things, plus some number of reputation, some number of dread, and some number of morale on your board. If you lose the fight, you don't get those last 3 things. In fact, you would lose reputation, you would lose morale, and you would lose your dread because you're not scary anymore if you're losing fights. But those rewards not only give you resources and things for the next phases of the game, they also help you fulfill those council contracts because they want you to, for example, fight a ship that has a certain number of cannons or a ship that gives you a certain amount of money or a certain amount of food. They're kind of like objectives for you to complete, and you're looking at all of the available objectives. So if you have taken some over the course of the game that are in your hand, you can complete any number of them that they qualify for and any number that are still remaining. So going first again is huge because you could potentially find one ship that fulfills 2 or 3 of those contracts and claim all 3 of them after one combat.
Yeah, and the link between those 2 things as well helps players communicate to each other, and you don't necessarily want to do this.
Right.
But if I take 2 of these council cards and Ryan notes which ones I took, he's going to have some sense in the hunt phase which ship I'm going to be going after. So he could effectively go to the harbor with more time and then sneak in there and take that ship out. And now I'm stuck maybe going after a ship that's 7 away and taking on a lot of event cards, and it completely sort of takes apart my plans, if you will.
Yeah, now the reason that you're still getting those resources, the reason those resources are valuable, at the end of the phase, after we've completely resolved the hunt, you have to feed your people. Every crew card that you have has a cost that needs to be paid. David mentioned earlier that some cards get exhausted. You have to pay them double their food to unexhaust them. So if you don't pay your crew food, if you don't feed them, they just leave.
Yeah.
And that can be pretty bad. So you can lose crew that way, which are worth negative points. You can also potentially have crew die. If your ship takes too much damage and there's excess damage, you can lose crew that way. So managing and maintaining that crew is integral. Of course, you can do things like go to the market. If you're not confident about your fighting ability, you can just go to the market and buy a ton of food. That way you're covered just in case. But paying your crew and food is a very important part of the game.
Yeah, for sure. I think the game is going to end, too, after 5 rounds. And the ships and the merchant ships that come out are going to be more and more challenging up into the last round, where ships come out that effectively don't have a lot of rewards but are going to give you more significant points.
Yeah, and they give you, some of the last set of ships give you in-game scoring because the game ends after the 5th hunt phase. You don't need to pay your people at the end of the game. So all the final ships have in-game scoring, which is great because that adds to your infamy points, as do all the ships that you've managed to defeat in combat and all of those council cards that you managed to complete. All of those things are going to give you infamy for the end of the game.
Yeah, so this is a pirate-themed game that has a little worker placement / action selection, and also a little fun, not push your luck, but a little game of chance going through layers of this battling. And again, it's the kind of thing where even though you're rolling dice, with really good, careful planning, you can kind of navigate, no pun intended, those waters and get through there. We were able to do that a fair amount of times. In fact, I think we may have failed maybe once or twice in the first few rounds.
Well, yeah, and it's hard to describe. You have to kind of see how effective like those sabotage cards are, and how like that the sniping of locations can really impact players. We didn't even really talk about some of the treasure cards. A lot of them just give you bonuses, but some of them even give negatives to your opponents as well. So even though you're not directly fighting each other, there is still a lot of take that. There is still a lot of PvP happening in this game.
You can do a lot of piratey sort of things to each other for sure. If you have any questions at all, please make them in the comments below, and we'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, of course, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.